try to stop us from stopping the worst bill that's ever been passed in the history of the Congress. And we have to do this.
Worst bill that's ever been passed in the history of the Congress. Wow! That's Georgia Republican Congressman and physician Phil Gingrey on the floor of the House. He should know about health care because he's not only a lawmaker, but a physician as well. Congressman Gingrey joins us now. Did you really mean it was the worst piece of legislation ever passed by the Congress? You got the Alien Sedition Act, the Fugitive Slave Act, a bunch of others that you and I could name. Or were you just trying to point out the degree and the depth of harm caused by Obamacare?
Well, Judge, a little of both. Quite honestly, I can't really imagine a much worse bill. Now, my friend Sheila Jackson Lee brought up some points. I would say to her that if she feels that the 15th Amendment is the most important of the 27, certainly I wouldn't argue with that. But look, this bill, the Obamacare, takes away the liberty, the right to choose for every citizen in this country.
Right.
That's a pretty darn egregious bill in my opinion, and maybe also, indeed the worst ever.
It also makes the states raise taxes and tells the states how to spend that money. So it violates a lot of liberties that we all thought were guaranteed in the Constitution. But here's my question, Congressman and Dr. Gingrey. What's next? What can the Republicans do? You guys voted to defund it in the House, but I don't think you're going to get that vote in the Senate. So what can Republicans who feel like you do next about this?
Well, certainly it appears that we're not going to get that vote in the Senate. But we can continue to defund parts of that bill, the most egregious parts of that bill, and continue to proper legislation that will truly bring down the cost of health care and to make health care more accessible to these 20 or 25 million people that don't have it because they can't afford it. There are so many things, and of course my bill, the Health Act, which just was passed out of the House Judiciary Committee, unfortunately on a bipartisan only vote, 18 to 15, that deals with medical liability reform that would save a minimum of $54 billion. So these are the kind of things that we need to do, Judge, and these are doable.
All right. Some parts of the bill are self-funding. Some parts of the bill make the states fund it. Some parts of the bill, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Congressman Gingrich, still need affirmative funding from the Congress. So I guess we can conclude, since the House of Representatives, as it is presently constituted, with a significant Republican majority, almost all of whom agree with you, the affirmative funding for parts of that bill simply is not going to happen in the next 2 years. Am I right?
Well, that's exactly why you are right, and that's exactly why in the 90-plus hours that we spent last week debating and proffering some 600 amendments over 90 hours of time, members on both sides of the aisle. But on our side, you saw a lot of striking amendments in regard to funding things like a health care czar and others, and that's what we're going to do, and that's what's part of the $61 billion worth of cuts. Be very interesting to see what the Senate does with that, especially those 18 Democrats who are up for re-election in 2012.
Right. Last question. The president knows how to read election returns, and so do those 18 Democrats that are up in the Senate for re-election in 2012. Are there any actual parts of the bill that the president and the Senate and the House can agree have to go and will go?
Well, you know, I would certainly hope that they would agree that there are certain parts of the bill, the things like, as an example, IPAD, Independent Payment Advisory Board, that would cut physician reimbursement on top of what they face every year anyway because of that flawed formula, sustainable growth rate. Listen, Judge, if these things are not done, the practice of medicine as we know it in this country will be destroyed. The doctor-patient relationship, more importantly, will be destroyed. And look, I wish we had more time for me to talk with you about these union activities. I want to come back and talk about the issue that's going on in Wisconsin and some bills that I want to offer and will offer regarding reining in federal employees that are abusing their union contracts.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Judge, thank you for having me.
From Tunisia to Egypt and now Libya, people are demanding freedom from their tyrannical governments. And now word is Saudi Arabia could be next. Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Judith Miller weighs in on all of that. Libya is on the brink. Protesters there are demanding that its tyrannical and brutal leader Gaddafi step down. And today oil prices rose and even more stocks fell even further on fears the unrest could soon move to Saudi Arabia, where so much of our oil comes from. Joining us now on the crisis, Judith Miller, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, and my Fox News colleague, Judy. Welcome here. What should the American government do when it sees these demonstrations in the streets getting very serious, when there's an opportunity to boot out a brutal or tyrannical dictator, even one with whom we've done business, like Hosni Mubarak, or to a limited and on a lesser scale, Gaddafi himself?
Well, I think with respect to Hosni Mubarak, the deposed leader of Egypt, we have to say, Judge, that he was a stalwart ally of the United States for 30 years. And how you treat him is very different from how the United States should treat the man who may have ordered, and probably did order, the destruction of the Pan Am flight, which killed all those Americans.
Right.
But, you know, what President Obama said today was, I think, correct and right, and it struck the right tone.
Should the United States government stay out of these things, or should it encourage these revolutions in the streets? This one is a bloody revolution. As I understand it, half the country is under the control of the rebels as we speak. Gaddafi's in the other half.
Right, exactly, the protesters. And the protesters have the half with the oil, which of course is of great interest to us. But right now, I think we want to avoid making America the issue. And as President Obama pointed out today, the United States did not do this. The people of Libya did this. The people of Tunisia did this. The people of Egypt demanded this. And therefore, to turn on the United States and say, it's your fault, as Gaddafi did yesterday, is not only wrong, but, as he said, outrageous.
You have actually had dinner with Gaddafi.
Many times.
What is he like? If he were at this table and the cameras weren't here, what would you expect of him?
You know, I would expect exactly what we've heard. The man is erratic, mercurial, some say completely nuts. But nobody stays in power 42 years in the Middle East, in a region as rough, as tumultuous as that, without having something on the ball.
When he says that he will fight to the last drop of his own blood, do you believe that he means that and that he will do that?
Absolutely, I believe him, and that's what makes me so frightened for the people who are still in Libya, the foreigners, for the Libyans themselves, who are extremely nice and very tormented people. I believe him absolutely.
Does the President and does the Secretary of State run the risk that the revolution might not succeed, and they've sided with the protesters, and they may have to deal with a government more monstrous than we ever imagined after this revolution is over?
Well, it's kind of hard to imagine a government more monstrous than this one in terms of its people and how it's treated the poor 6.5 million people of Libya. But yes, that's always why one hesitates to get in the middle of what seems to be shaping up as kind of a civil war.
You mentioned the Pan Am flight. The person who gave that information until a week ago was the Minister of Justice, Gaddafi's own appointee, someone who worked in his cabinet and under him for years, now says, by the way, he is the monster you all thought that he really was.
Right. And he was responding, by the way, when Gaddafi gave the order, he was responding to the bombing of his country by Ronald Reagan in 1986. So people who oppose the kind of use of violence for revenge point to incidents like this and say, you start this and the end is just more bloodshed and more violence.
Last question. We only have about 30 seconds to go, Judy. Your former dinner companion, will he be in office a week from now?
You know, Judge, my crystal ball is a little cloudy. I didn't see Egypt coming. I thought that the security establishment was stronger than it was. At this point, I think I'm going to refrain from making predictions that I might regret.
All right, but are you surprised that some of the military is shooting at him?
No, I'm not surprised, and I'm actually delighted because I think it speaks well of the Libyan military.
Judy Miller, it's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to be with you.
And now a few items from our Freedom File. Many Americans are happy about the TSA's use of enhanced body scanners that produce a pornographic image of a traveler's body. Most Americans are perfectly okay with such a profound violation of their Fourth Amendment right against a warrantless search of their body. Why? Because it's in the name of safety. Safety? Okay, recently at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport, an undercover TSA agent snuck a gun through a TSA body scanner. So not only do these machines violate your rights, they also apparently can't stop one from sneaking a gun onto an airplane. So why does the government use them? The loss of liberty always seems to come in the name of safety. There's been a small victory for liberty here in the Big Apple. New York State Supreme Court Justice Emily Jane Goodman recently ruled that all shooting reports filed by the New York City Police Department must be made public. The NYPD has been fighting tooth and nail to prevent this. What are they afraid of? And do they really think that the people of New York, the ones who pay their salaries, don't have a right to know at whom the NYPD shoots? Good for Judge Goodman for forcing the NYPD to be more transparent. Patricia Marilyn Spotted Crow of Kingfisher, Oklahoma, is the wife and mother of 4. She is a wife and mother of 4. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison for selling $31 worth of marijuana to an informant who turned the marijuana over to the police. No one used it. No one was harmed by it. Put aside your own opinions on drug use. Can't we at least agree that it's in no one's interest, not this mother, not her family, not the state of Oklahoma, not the taxpayers of Oklahoma, for this woman to be incarcerated and for the government to pay for her in jail for the next 10 years? Her crime hurt no one, and marijuana should be legal in private. But even so, to imprison someone for so long over such a small amount of pot is cruel and unusual punishment, and the Constitution forbids that. The Middle East in chaos? Who's to blame? My next guest says America. You gotta hear this one next.